The Wii U was a hotbed of wasted potential. While it eventually gained a library of games worth playing, the ultimate conclusion was a system that was lost to poor marketing and long droughts without games. After more than 4 years of trying to stay afloat, Nintendo has completely sank the Wii U ship and debuted their latest console handheld hybrid, the Nintendo Switch. The Switch is Nintendo's most ambitious and possibly risky venture yet. Dropping discs altogether and creating a system that doubles as both in Nintendo's markets not only effectively kills the Wii U, but the 3DS as well. Though the 3DS hasn't been dropped like a trig class quite yet. What the Switch is intended to do, it does well, but there's some very worrying Nintendo faults surrounding the device that's causing concern. Every Switch comes with a left and right Joy-Con. Both can be detached from the Switch and used as their own two separate controllers, or slapped into the grip to turn them into more of a traditional controller. You can also use them loosely without the grip, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're on a treadmill or exercise bike, which, coincidentally, the Switch does work great on. They don't cramp my hands despite how tiny they are, even when used in the two-player mode. Nintendo has also included straps for the Joy-Cons for the few motion games it has, but the real sell for those are the extensions for the SL and SR buttons. They aren't a perfect fit, but with the extensions, the Joy-Cons work lovely for multiplayer. I'm not sure I can see myself using them for an overly extended period of time this way, but for the few hours I played of snipper clips prove this setup does work and it works well. By far the best way to use the Joy-Cons is the grip. The grip turns the Joy-Cons into a more traditional controller and surprisingly, it's very comfortable. It's shocking how much better this feels. The only real complaint I have is the plus and the minus buttons. They're just out of reach, but considering they're your start and select buttons, that's not a whole lot to worry about there. The Joy-Cons and subsequently the grip lack a D-pad, which has been a staple of every single Nintendo console or handheld in some form since the NES. In its place are 4 different face buttons that double as normal buttons when using the left Joy-Con on its own. I can't speak for any fighting games, but these work far better than they should. The faux D-pad isn't as good as a normal D-pad, not by a long shot, but it's responsive when used in platformers, and you won't notice the bare space between the buttons too much. I'd even argue it actually works better for games like Zelda, wherein the D-pad is used for changing weapons. All 8 face buttons are clicky and responsive, and harken back to the DSi in terms of feel. Handheld mode is the Switch's biggest selling point, being able to take the game with you anywhere you go instantly. Taking the Switch off the dock and switching to handheld mode is seamless. There's no settings to change or adjust, just grab and go. It brings a smile to my face each time I do, and it can't fully be appreciated without seeing it for yourself. As far as holding it goes, the Switch is mostly comfy. It's slightly heavier than expected, yet less bulky than the Wii U tablet. The kickstand works, but feels very flimsy, as though it could snap off at any moment. The angle that it sits isn't the best either and feels pretty situational. Really, some way to change how far back it would tilt would have been preferred. The kickstand also covers the microSD card, which means if it breaks, your card is exposed. Granted, this hasn't happened yet, but compared to the build quality of the rest of the unit, it's shocking how cheap this one part feels. Equally irritating is the charging port. Nintendo was smart in using a standard charging port, USB-C. Tons of cell phones and other devices these days use USB-C, so finding something to charge your Switch, if you're on the go and don't have the dock, should be fairly easy. The problem is the port is on the bottom of the Switch. Not a big deal if you're holding the thing, which, to charge and play it undocked, you have to. Without something to prop it up, the kickstand can't be used if the Switch needs to be charged. I can understand why it's on the bottom. The idea is to make the Joy-Cons as easy as possible to come off, and this is how it loads on the dock. But whenever you just want to use the kickstand and can't because it needs to charge, the whole problem just exudes itself as a design flaw. Speaking of design flaws, there's been plenty of reports claiming the left Joy-Con comes unsynced from the Switch. After using it for over a week, I can safely say, neither Joy-Con ever desynced. In fact, I went out of my way to obstruct them while in the grip and still didn't get any desync. The little buggers also hold one hell of a charge. I've only had one time where they got even remotely close to red, and I'm sure having them constantly docked to the Switch is the reason for that. The Switch has essentially one function and one function only, to play games. The few other supplementary features it has, such as the eShop and posting screenshots to Twitter or Facebook, are purposefully minimal. The UI is snappy and quick, and easily the fastest of this generation, and the fastest Nintendo's made for this type of device. There's no glitz or glam, nothing that gives it that Nintendo feel. I'd call it a detriment if it didn't work so well. For everything the Switch does right, there's also a looming cloud of doubt above it, rightly so. I started off the review talking about the Wii U and the problems it suffered, the biggest of which was the drought of games. The Switch has a hell of an indie and first-party lineup coming, but there's so much we don't know despite having it in our hands. You can add friends, but the online service doesn't exist at the time of this review, and supposedly, all functionality will be regulated to an app for phones. While I can't speak for how it works since, well, it's not out yet, that sounds clunky on paper and to have to juggle anything outside the system itself. We know games are coming, some very exciting ones at that, but we don't know when other than a vague quarter or month dates. And as exciting as indie titles can be, a lot of these are already available elsewhere or will be. Timed exclusives are nice, but they're just that, timed. And while Nintendo seems to be attempting to repair bridges with third-party developers, one can't help but question why AAA companies have been so quiet about when their games are coming. Nintendo has stated that their strategy is to debut at least one new indie game release a week, which is smart and gives players new content, but very few of those games are exclusive to the Switch. The next big release appears to be Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which, at the time of this review, is more than a month away. And while Mario Kart 8 is, without a doubt, the best Mario Kart so far, it's more than a little understandable that people are a little burned after dropping all the dough for the Wii U version. To ensure the survival of the Switch, Nintendo is going to have to come out swinging with games. And right now, while Breath of the Wild is a can't-miss masterpiece, it's also available on the Wii U, and not quite enough to justify the $300 plus price tag after the system and the game itself. The Switch has plenty of great content coming, but the question is, when? This is an incredible piece of technology, and for what it's worth, there are some great games on the eShop already, like Shovel Knight and Blaster Master Zero. But the Switch will not survive if it goes through the traditional Nintendo drought that we've been seeing since the GameCube. It's hard to truly recommend the Switch right this second. While I can already say I've enjoyed it more than my Wii U at launch, and it feels far more worth the money, the fact that there's so much we still don't know, like online, virtual console release dates, etc., is worrying. Nintendo has always been a secretive company that loves to surprise its fans, but for the Switch to be successful, they're going to need to evolve, and while the technology is there, the features and games shrouded in mystery right now is more than enough cause for concern. If you want to have Zelda and console games on the go, right now, get the Switch. In layman's terms, it's very, very cool and was a huge selling point for me. In fact, it still is. You will need to be prepared for the uncertainty about the library, but if that's not a bother, then by all means get one. For everyone else, I'd say let the library build up first and look into getting one by the end of the year. The Switch is one hell of a system, but to have faith, Nintendo's gonna have to open up, and only time will tell if they ever do.